Welcome to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness, the podcast for hormone and functional medicine providers who want a thriving, predictably profitable practice and maybe a little less stress along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Jody Lane, and I've worked with lots of clinics in marketing, sales, and business development, and I have seen what works and what doesn't. And here's what I believe. Hormone and wellness care should be available to everyone who wants it. And while providers know the medicine, many struggle with the business side of their cash practice. And that's where I come in. See, this podcast is here to share real strategies, real stories, things you can implement in your practice right away. So I am so glad you're here. Come on, let's go. Are you somebody who processes information quickly and makes decisions fast? Or are you somebody who needs to research it, analyze it, sit with it, and then decide? I ask because I live with both. When Jamie, my husband, and I argue, I can have an entire argument in 15 minutes. He may need the next 15 days. I process fast. I think through every avenue at once. I decide quick, and I take action quick. Jamie, on the other hand, is analytical. He needs time to process. He needs time to think. Now, I have not fully determined whether he is genuinely more an analytical person or whether he just doesn't want to finish an argument with me that fast. The jury's still out on that one. But here's the point, and it has everything to do with your clinic. There are completely different kinds of people in this world, different in how they process information, different in what they need in order to make a decision, different in what they value, and how long it all takes. And if your practice is treating every single patient the same way, at the same pace, with the same amount of contact, you're going to lose people. Not sure about this? That is what this episode is all about. Welcome back to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness. I'm Jody Lane, and this is episode 4 of our 6-part series on the biggest marketing gaps in a hormone and wellness clinic. And this episode is about the gap that costs you the most money, but gets the least amount of attention. It's what happens to your patient after they say yes. Now, after almost a decade in this industry, here's one thing that I've seen pretty much across the board in just about every practice I've visited. When someone shows up for an initial consultation about their hormones, whatever state they walk in with, it could be scared, could be excited, it could be hopeful, it could be full belief. But when they start treatment, there is an element of expectation that things are going to change fast. Why? Well, part of it is what we talked about earlier. Some people process quickly. Some people need more time to analyze. But honestly, I think it has much more to do with traditional medicine. You see, wellness medicine, whether that's hormone optimization or supplementation, nutrition, whatever proactive thing you're doing to keep a body healthy, does not happen overnight. It's a process. You're either reversing damage that has already been done or you're replacing something that is no longer being made. That is what preventative medicine is all about. But we are conditioned as patients of traditional medicine to experience symptom relief happening fast. That's probably the biggest problem with traditional medicine. And I know that you already know this. Instead of going after the root cause of what is creating the symptom, traditional care treats the symptom itself. Like if you have digestive issues, they give you something to take the pain away, take the bloating away. And those medications usually work fast because they were designed to do one very specific thing and do it quickly. So now that conditioned patient, excited or scared or hopeful or even fully committed, and you start them on hormones. Even if you do a beautiful job explaining the process their body is going to go through and how long it will realistically take before they physically feel a change or visually see a change, it doesn't matter. Most people are still, somewhat quietly, evaluating your results against the standard of a pharmaceutical. Now, this is not something that you don't already know. I am absolutely preaching to the choir here. So why am I making a whole episode about it? And what does this have anything to do with your marketing gaps? Well, because it is entirely about what you do with your patient from the day after they start treatment through the end of their first year. Let me tell you a story about myself. So when I started at the clinic in Orlando, on day 1 of my job, I became a patient. Quick backstory if you're new. I had a marketing agency back in 2015. I picked up a hormone clinic and provider as a client, and I did his marketing for 2 years. We became friends. He had this vision of where he wanted the clinic to go, and we decided that I would step in as the chief operating officer, not to just run the marketing, but to do business development and actually take the clinic where this owner wanted it to go. So on day one, I was not new to hormones. I had been researching, I had been writing, I was running the social media, I was working with the ads manager. I genuinely understood the science behind hormone replacement therapy, but I had never been a patient. So I walked in on day one and I said to my boss, let's Facebook Live my entire hormone journey, because back then Facebook Live was still kind of a big thing. And so we did. I Facebook Live getting my blood drawn. I lived my lab review on my initial consultation. I even lived my pellet procedure, which was very interesting. And then about 18 hours later, I Facebook Lived what happened to me next. I remember this feeling of a superpower washing over me. I woke up in an instant. The best way I could describe it was that all of a sudden I had the effect of 14 cups of coffee and the energy of a child, and I felt like I could see colors again. It was overwhelmingly amazing. And it lasted about 24 hours. In that 24 hours, I cleaned my whole house. I got into a gigantic argument with my husband, probably because I was so amped up. And then the feeling just went away. Providers may have heard this from patients before, but I felt like I spent the next several months chasing that high. What I understood much later was what had happened was that I was so depleted that when my body finally got some testosterone, it soaked it up, made me feel incredible, and then it was gone and the first rush was over. But when that feeling went away and I couldn't get it back, I actually started to think, does this stuff even work? And I was upset. I wanted a booster. I wanted more testosterone. I was starting to go down a spiral, and I was working at the clinic. Sit with that for a second. Had I not worked there, had I not had in the next office one of the smartest hormone experts in the field at my disposal, had I not done all that research, had I not sat with patients who called to cancel and then I listened to their why, I would have concluded that something was wrong with me or the hormones, and I would have just quit. So about 6 months into that job, after all those conversations, I realized something. People were having wildly different experiences of that same first year, and I wanted to help them have a better one. And that is where the first year new patient automation came from. The first year new patient automation is a series of 13 touch points over the course of the first year designed to speak directly into the mind of a person who is starting hormones for the first time. It lives in the retention category of our practice automation system, the product that we built for hormone clinics. Clinicians who have the practice automation system start with 20 campaigns, some lead generation, some sales conversion, some retention. And this one we're talking about today is absolutely one of my favorite of all of them. Now, you don't need our system to have this. You can totally build it yourself. But the value of retention marketing is so incredible for your business that we are literally going to spend the rest of this episode covering it, and specifically 3 things. What is the intention behind it? What goes inside of it? And what it's worth to you. Now, when I was at that clinic, leads would call in before they ever came in for a consultation, and many of them asked the exact same question. How long is it going to take before I feel effects? Because again, we are trained to believe that something is working only if we can feel it, which is so not true. And I hope that you are doing a great job explaining this to your patients. You're never going to feel the effects of optimal vitamin D or any supplement of that matter. So what is the honest answer to that question? Well, the honest answer is, I don't know. I don't know how long it's going to take you to feel it, because everybody is different and dosing is both an art and a science. But I don't know is not where the answer stops. When I would take those calls, my answer was more along the lines of, well, I don't know how long it's going to take. What I can tell you is that we here at this practice are committed to standing alongside you through the entire process so that we can make adjustments as needed and get you to optimal as quickly as possible. Which means we want your labs at 6 weeks. We want you to contact us if you feel something unusual or feel nothing at all. We want you to let us know if your symptoms get worse or if they all of a sudden disappear. We have to stay in communication because your feedback is what allows your provider to adjust. Now, the first year new patient automation is literally built to be that partner. It keeps you and your clinic top of mind and keeps your patient's world and keeps you in your patient's world without somebody on your team having to call every single patient every single week. Because let's be honest about the other half of that. Yes, we encourage patients to call the office if something is off, but that doesn't always happen. And I've never fully understood this, but some patients like to suffer in silence. They come in for their next pellet and they say, oh my God, I had the worst acne, or I was so tired this time, or I gained some weight. I think it was water weight. They didn't call. They didn't tell you. They just sat with it and they lived with it. But if you are constantly in front of them, there is a much better chance that they are going to feel supported enough to pick up the phone and share what's going on. And that's the whole intention. For you to be proactive, to stay in their world and to nudge them along the way. Have them remember what their goal was when they started. Remind them this is a marathon and not a sprint. And remind them that if anything feels out of the ordinary, they should call the office right away because that's how relationships get built. And whoever thought of having a relationship with their doctor? Well, you do, but you have to guide them to work on that relationship. Now, let's talk about what actually goes inside this automation. First, a word that might be new to you. It's called evergreen. In marketing, evergreen means a piece of content is still appropriate and still valuable no matter when somebody sees it. So if I tell you right now on this podcast that I'm doing a webinar on Tuesday, that's not evergreen because if you hear this episode on Wednesday, the webinar is over. Every touch in your first year new patient automation has to be evergreen. It cannot be tied to a specific date or a specific event, and it cannot be specific to an individual patient either. That takes a little creative balance because you may want to be more personal with your patients, and I'll tell you exactly how to do that in just a few minutes. But the automated pieces need to work for everybody, male, female, or whatever modality they're on. Here is what you can do though. You can walk through the patient journey and predict a few general truths. The first couple of touches are pure welcome. You're so glad they're here. You're excited to be part of their journey. Here's where you can find you on social media, on the YouTube channel. Here's who your staff is. Warm, generous, we're glad you're here kind of stuff. Then in your office, if your office does labs 5 to 6 weeks after a patient starts, drop an email at the 5-week mark. Your first lab review is coming up. Let's make sure that you have an appointment on the books. It's generic and it's true for every single patient. If you typically write a 90-day prescription or your pellets typically run 90 to 120 days, then you may say something around 90 days to start thinking about refills. Please give the office 48 to 72 hours notice when you're running low because we aren't able to turn those around same day. That's a little support email that saves your front desk from headaches and takes care of your patient. Maybe around 4 or 5 months, a lot of people start quietly wondering, is this really working? They're getting symptom relief and they're settling into that new normal and the contrast has faded. So this is where I love a message that says something like, do you remember the goal you had when you first started? Are you starting to feel some changes now? Maybe you're sleeping better. Maybe you're getting to the gym a few more times a week. Let's re-anchor to your goal. Why don't you take a moment, write it down, and bring it to your next appointment so we can talk about it? You're giving them a little bit of a homework assignment, and they will love you for it. Also, then you can intermingle some genuinely useful stuff about their lifestyle. Maybe it's a workout, a recipe for a dessert that's both healthy and actually tasty, a link to an article on something that you may talk about with every single patient, something like insulin resistance or sleep quality and how it drives everything else. You're feeding them more of you than they would otherwise get in between their appointments. And don't forget to sprinkle in some reminders while you're there. If you need anything, we're here. Give us a call. Those are great text messages. Oh, and you can also ask them for a review. I would put that around the 6-month mark, especially if you have an automated review process. You can just point them to the link. And if you have a referral program, remind them a couple of times to share their results with friends and family, and then give them something to hand over. Hey listeners, before we keep going with the episode, I want to take a quick moment and ask you something, because you know how much I care about helping hormone clinics succeed. When someone contacts your clinic but doesn't book an appointment, how quickly does your team decide that lead is lost? Is it after one phone call? A few days? How about longer than a month? You see, in my experience, most prospective patients who have reached out to you are not necessarily saying no. Sometimes they just need more education before they feel comfortable moving forward. Sometimes they need to speak with their spouse to see how it's going to fit into their lives. Sometimes they just need more time to understand the investment and figure out their options before making a big decision about their health. So they may not be a no, they may simply be a not yet. The challenge is that your team is busy. And that isn't a criticism of your team, not at all. Every busy clinic faces the same busy challenge. So when leads keep arriving and patients need immediate attention, what gets your focus? It's the existing patient right in front of you, of course, and that's exactly what it should be. So without a system maintaining those other relationships, even interested prospects can quietly disappear when forgotten. This is one of the problems that Practice Automation System was built to solve. A prospect who does not answer your call right away will receive one type of follow-up, and someone who speaks with your team but isn't ready to book will receive another type of follow-up. And finally, someone who just needs more time can continue receiving helpful, educational information through a longer nurturing process until they are ready to reconsider. The point of this isn't about chasing or pressuring people. It's about making sure your clinic is still front of mind when they are finally ready to move forward. To see how Practice Automation System can help you do that, go to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com/demo. That's acceleratedmedicalpractices.com/demo. All right, let's get back to the episode. Now, let's get back to the personal touches, because I do want you to have a few touches that are highly personal and not evergreen at all. The way you do that is with tasks inside your automation builder. Now, I'm a big believer in a phone call around the 60-day mark. Somebody in the office, hopefully your patient liaison, picks up the phone, calls the patient and says, I was just thinking about you today and wanted to make sure that everything was okay. If it goes to voicemail, great. Go ahead and leave that message. If you get them on the phone, even better. But who is going to remember to do that on day 60? Absolutely nobody. So you need to put a task in the automation and assign that to a very specific person to do that specific thing. Maybe it isn't a phone call. Maybe it's a task to send a personal email off with a template, where that person takes 30 seconds to write something real, like, I hope your pellets are treating you well, or I love that you and your husband are now both seeing us. I'm sure that's been extra good for your relationship. Yes, this is a manual effort. The automated part is that you never have to remember it because the task is automated and shows up to remind you. And for that, you need a CRM, a customer relationship management software. Here at Accelerated Medical Practices, our practice automation system is built on either Go High Level or Keep. We use both because different offices need different things. If you're building this yourself, I would go with Go High Level. It's a good place to start. It's very inexpensive, but here's a fair warning. It has a lot of features and it can feel very overwhelming. But if you want a tool that lets you invest the time once and let the thing run, then you need to do something like this. So let's move into what we're actually trying to accomplish here. It is dramatically cheaper to keep a patient than it is to find a new one. Now, I am not good at math. I know it's a limiting belief and people get mad at me when I say it, but it's also kind of the truth. So I'm just going to keep the numbers simple so that I don't get messed up. Let's say it costs you $500 all in to bring in a new patient. And when I say all in, I'm not just talking about your ad spend or your cost per conversion, but I'm also talking about the time it takes to create the content, the staff answering the phone, the time you spend doing the consultation. Realistically, that number for most clinics lands somewhere between $250 and $750. Whatever it is, I want you to subtract that from year one. So in our example, if your hormone program is $1,000 a year and your acquisition costs you $500, then the patient's first year nets you $500. Now, if they stayed 3 years, you would make $2,500. But if you are constantly replacing people, you're constantly paying that $500 again and again to earn back to the same place. Now flip it. If you would otherwise have to replace 10 patients a month and each one costs you $500 to acquire, then keeping those 10 patients saves you $5,000. Run the math however it fits whatever you charge and whatever acquisition costs you. But I promise you, it always comes out in the same direction. And you know what? It's not only about the money. Serving a patient is less time consuming than acquiring a new one, and your team feels the difference. But you know what? It's actually bigger than that. Why did you get into this business in the first place? You did it because you want people to have extraordinary lives. You know from the science you've studied and practiced that people live healthier lives when their hormones are optimized, and that's their foundation. So when patients stop treatment because they're worried, or because they've decided it doesn't work, or because they have questions that nobody answered, or because they don't feel connected to you and they start clinic hopping for a better price, that is a health outcome you lost, not just revenue. And let's be honest about price here for a second. Almost nobody leaves a business over price alone. Because if someone is genuinely happy with you, they're not going to go shopping to save $100 to $150 a year. It just doesn't happen. When price is the reason they give you, something else in the relationship was already broken and price was the final straw. Which brings me back to something we already talked about in episode 1. If you haven't listened to it, go ahead, go back and take a listen. But you need to date your patient. Keep treating your patients like a lead all the way through that first year. Now, I'm not saying that you should stop at 12 months, but what I am saying is that the first year is the most volatile stretch you'll ever have with them, because that is when changes are the biggest and doubt is the loudest. Put in extra effort in that first year. Make them feel like a person and not a number, and you will see it in your numbers over time. Now, I need to give one honest caveat. Retention is not a metric you build on a dashboard and then read out in 90 days. It just isn't. Yes, you need to track how many patients you bring on and how many cancel. And it will take a year, maybe 2, to see how the changes you made actually reduces cancellations. So you're going to just have to trust me for a minute while you build your own data. And you should build it. Create a simple spreadsheet where you track every week. Number of leads, number of discovery calls, number of scheduled consultations, number of signed plans, number of cancellations. That is what we train and work with our clients to do every week. And it's some of the most valuable information that you can get in your practice about your business. And you should start it now, even before you build the automation. Then build the automation and keep tracking. I've watched this work in hundreds of practices, and it will definitely work for yours. Now, if you're sitting there and you're thinking about all this communication and you're worried that your patients are going to get too many emails and this will annoy people, then you're going to lose some of them because you're inundating them, then I want you to do 3 specific things. The first one is give them a middle option. When somebody clicks unsubscribe, don't make the choice all or nothing. Give them an option to reduce how many messages they get instead. It's a genuinely valuable tool, and depending upon your email platform, you can build it right in. Number 2, and listen to this one, do not sell. Nothing in the first year new patient automation should be selling a thing. No deals, no offers, no discounts. You can absolutely tell them about your other services, but educate them on the purpose of the service. Do not sell it. The moment you start selling inside of a retention campaign, your odds of losing that person go way up. Do your selling somewhere else. And then number 3, if people are unsubscribing or they're complaining, the real problem is that it isn't interesting. Almost nobody gets frustrated by something valuable landing in their inbox. So if you're sending generic information that's self-serving, or it's something they can find on any hormone website in 30 seconds, that's most likely the reason they're unsubscribing, not because it's too many emails. So dig deeper. What do they actually need to know? What would meaningfully elevate their wellness? And it doesn't have to be just about hormones. If you feel like you've given them everything there, what else in the wellness world can you teach them? Don't just teach at the high level, give them something to do. People genuinely want to improve. Give them what they need to do to improve. So I hope that this was a little enlightening. None of it was new exactly. I know you've thought about all of this before, but my point in giving a whole episode to the first year of a new patient is that I want you to sit with how much is riding on it. If you sat down tomorrow and mapped out an automation, thought through each moment in the first year where a human being needs to hear from you and then build it, you could have this done in probably 2 weeks. Or as always, just give us a call because the practice automation system has the first year new patient automation already built. Plus, you're going to get 19 other campaigns along with it and a new campaign every single month because we here practice what we preach. Either way, whether you build it yourself or you have somebody build it with you, I hope that this episode showed you just how much value is sitting in that first year. It's good for your bottom line. It's good for your patients. And it positions you as a credible authority in a space where that is getting harder and harder to do each month with new hormone options popping up everywhere. All right, guys, thank you for listening. We are here at episode 4 in our 6-part series on the biggest marketing gaps in a hormone and wellness clinic. And I'm so excited to bring you episode 5. I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Beyond Hormones, the business of wellness. I hope that you're walking away with fresh ideas and real strategies you can use to grow your practice with profit and purpose. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if something you heard today resonated with you, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend or a colleague. It's one of the best ways you can support the show, and it might be exactly what they need to hear right now. If you want even more tools and support, go ahead and head over to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. Until next time, keep doing the work that matters. Your patients need you, and I am cheering you along every step of the way.